LLM, and we have LLM in international trade and economic laws and in international environmental law. And apart from that, I have about 2 dozen PhD scholars. So that's the background. And my exposure to legal education in India in last 5 years that I've been with the Amity Law School, I realized that with over 950 law colleges and schools in India, that's the sort of statistics as per the Bar Council of India directory, there is a big room for a qualitative change in the sphere of legal education. What we did, I can only share with you what we have tried out in the Amity Law School, was number one, to begin with, a greater reliance on clinical legal education. Because I look at it this way, that say if I have a faculty who's teaching criminal procedure code, now if that faculty herself has never been inside a police station, she has not seen how a charge sheet is framed, what is an FIR, what's the difference between a suspect, an accused, and a convict, how the complaints are made, I think it's very difficult for a faculty of that competence to adequately teach and bring the students update in the field of, say, criminal procedure code that I gave an example. Or somebody who's teaching taxation but is not in a capacity to file a tax return himself. What do you expect from a faculty like this? So we went in for faculty development in a sustained manner, and apart from that, placing huge reliance on clinical legal education. Now, I'll take a few minutes to talk about this clinical legal education mode in India that we introduced in our law school, and then it was infectious. We found that it's spreading and being taken up by others as well. Now, there are certain old established norms or modes of clinical legal education. Say, for example, traditional modes included debates, client interviewing or client counseling techniques, legal aid clinics, moots, legal writings, etc. Now, in this area of traditional modes of clinical legal education, I call it that way, we insisted that each of the student takes up and participates in one such activity, because it is the mood where a student gets tuned to think while on feet, and it gives him practice to appear before the appellate courts. So the moods, they had huge sort of interest, and right from the first semester, in the case of 5 years education, where a student learns in a law school for 5 years, right in the first semester, we started talking to the students about the utility, about the benefits from moot, and we found that it did make a big difference. Apart from that, client interviewing, I told you, legal aid clinics. Now, this was one area where a student, he is transformed and he is introduced to the practice of talking to a client and speaking to him what particular legal remedy would be applicable to the problem that he is confronted with. And we tied up with the district administration in Noida, Gautam Budh Nagar, and this is under the National Legal Services Authorities Act, as an initiative which the government is very keen that the students and the law community should indulge in. So we got the encouragement and a support, and we had a number of legal services, legal aid clinics held successfully. And I'm proud to say that the previous Chief Justice of India, Altamash Kabir, when he was the senior judge in the Supreme Court, he wanted the judicial officers of Western Uttar Pradesh to be trained into this act, National Legal Services Authorities Act, and he chose the venue, and the venue was chosen as Amity Law School. And we had, on a particular Sunday, all the judges, a large number of judges from the High Court of Uttar Pradesh, Delhi High Court, and Justice Altamash Kabir was himself there, where we had these judicial officers, magistrates, and additional district judges, etc., from the different states of Uttar Pradesh who were in our law school. And we had this camp on the legal aid and the aims, objects, the mechanics to practice under the National Legal Services Authorities Act. Now, apart from these traditional modes, what we started in the Amity Law School was a competition on law reforms. Now, my particular view was that ultimately the final test or a job for a law practitioner in a court is to gain an advantage for his client or to keep him away from a disadvantage. It's very simple, and this we learned when we were teaching interpretation of statutes. Ultimately, for your client, you got to give him an advantage or to keep him away from a disadvantage, disability, or deficiency, fine, punishment, whatever. Now, in that way, the interpretation of statutes play a very important role, and linked to that is because the law framers, most of them, the parliamentarians or the legislators, they are not trained into that art of lawmaking. And very often we find, at least in our context, that a bill that is introduced within a very sort of simple debate running into a couple of hours or a few hours, and that becomes a law. And thereby, there are deficiencies, gaps, shortages in law, need for interpretation of statutes. So we went in the clinical legal mode for a competition on law reforms, where short of the parliamentary passage, that was not the aim to practice a student into parliamentary passage, but short of it, to go into the areas where there is either deformity in the existing law or there is absence of law. There are a large number of areas like that, and we have some laws that date back to more than 150 years. So we chose one particular area, and we had the different law schools from India participating in ACLR, that is what we call Amity Competition on Law Reforms. And aims and objects, clause by clause consideration of bills, the time schedule, then say even financial implication, all this with a model law the students or the competitors were expected to come up with. And they were also to apply their mind as to if this particular law, legislation is introduced, what changes or ramifications it would have on other laws, say for example financial laws or laws relating to crime, or if it would entail a change to the constitution. Then they were expected to come up with a wholesome passage, a wholesome package, that this would be the change required in the shape of this new bill, but this would also require the constitution to be amended or the criminal law to be amended or other law to be amended. And we've had two, this is an yearly event, we've had 2 sessions on this competition on law reforms, and we found that this was also found quite attractive by the students, and we thereafter entered into an exercise that the different models and suggestions that were forwarded by the students, because the students were expected, having submitted their legislative initiatives, as opposed to moot where you call it a memorial, here they had to submit their legislative initiatives. They were expected to get up and say in a given time of about 45 minutes, defend or explain their proposal to a committee of judges numbering 5 or 3. Now that was competition on law reforms. Then we started the project on community lawyering, and through the forum of residents' welfare associations that are there in different localities in Delhi, different parts of Delhi, we sent our students on these missions relating to community lawyering, and we found that this was also quite useful. The other mode was legal entrepreneurship. Now, what was this legal entrepreneurship? I would like to explain this to you. We have some students not very large, but nevertheless, each batch, each section, there are a few students who are in a position to sort of wait for some time, and they would not like to join the conventional mode of litigation or join a corporate law firm. They would like to start something on their own. And we got the idea from the earlier batches of National Law School, Bangalore, where the students who were from the original batches, they set up some of the well-known law corporate firms that exist in India today. And we said that these are students who have the capacity, so they got to think, where do I sort of set up my office? What should be the size, shape of my office? How do I get my library? What would be sort of, how do I advertise about it? And to initiate them into this practice of legal entrepreneurship, we started with very basic steps, like say, for example, on execution of wills. Now, execution of wills and thereby registration of wills is not compulsory, not obligatory under the Indian legal regime. So they went about, and for that they had to be sensitized to, say, the family laws, the property laws, the succession planning, and we have held one very successful camp in this regard. The next camp is likely to take place. Do I have some time?
Yes, it's just that we wanted to open it a little more for
Okay.
to the forum. So sorry, yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I've done enough of talking. With this background, I'll be very happy, and I initiate and open this discussion.
Yes.
For any comment, suggestion relating to what I have just said or what I have not said, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. And now we can have an open forum, some questions, and then we'll proceed with the women empowerment section after that. So please, anyone has, yes.
My question to Mr. Chopra is with you. What words will you have to a young lawyer when he appears in the court and didn't get the order from the judge, but the senior advocate appears in the court, argues the same thing, and he gets the order? What motivation as a young lawyer can have in this?
You have to pick yourself up, dust yourself, go back to your law, study it even deeper and get better than your senior lawyer. You come back and get at him and you win that case the next time. Or you go into appeal. That's what you do, boss. That's how it happens everywhere for everything in life. You just get up, dust yourself, go back, study deeper, look again, and find something that you didn't find the first time, or the second time, or the third time, because there's always something there that you missed.
Can I just add to? Yes.
The more junior you are, the more you get to the judge. That's it.
Yeah.
Directly proportional.
So, yes, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Edgar Philippin. I'm a lawyer in Switzerland. I'm a professor for corporate law at Lausanne University as well. And I would like to make two comments, perhaps. The first one is a reflection on what Mr. Chopra said earlier. He said, don't be shy, don't be afraid to ask. And I would also like to say, don't be afraid to answer, don't be afraid to participate in legal education. Even if you think you're not sure about what you're going to say, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you that there is no wrong answer, because you all know how exams work. Sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. But in any answer, even in something that doesn't look so right from the outset, there is something that can be discussed and guide you towards the right answer. Besides, if you have a class with 100 students, a mistake you will make in public is a mistake you will never make again. So don't be afraid to answer, to participate in discussions. And I would like to make a second comment as well, which connects legal education with the young lawyer discussion we had a moment ago. There were questions about specialization. It's fun to specialize. One might have an interest in intellectual property, the other one in criminal defense, and it's fun to specialize. It gives you a purpose. But do not forget that you will specialize in time and with time. It is very important to have a very solid background, and you want to have, before everything, you want to have the right methods assimilated so that you can do anything after that. A good method, a good background is absolutely essential then to practice anything. I give you an example. One of the courses I teach at the university, the statute I'm teaching about, didn't even exist at the time of my study. So I just picked it up and specialized in that afterwards. So it's extremely important to have a very solid background.
Thank you. Anybody? Yeah.
So this question is to Nilendra sir. So is there some sort of provision for this clinical legal mode on online sort of diploma course or something?
Thank you. You see, according to the syllabus laid down by the Bar Council of India, and the Bar Council of India is authorized and they are empowered to lay down the syllabus for the LLB education in India. There are supposed to be 4 papers on clinical legal education, but we found that there was really no book except for one by Professor Madhav Menon, and that was mainly directed at the faculty, not for the students. So then we came up with book, and yes, I would take up this suggestion if we can have some part of it online. But presently it's not there, suited, especially targeted at Indian conditions. There is none.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, definitely. And can you, Mr. Nil, if you can tell me what exactly the course contents of, like clinical education, like when you say it